Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday nights only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you can get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at the normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery needs or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. This show is also powered by you, the Loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. It's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest, he's a veritable legend in the baseball writing and analysis space, an original member, an OG, if you will, of Baseball Prospectus. Over the years, a contributor at The Athletic, Sports Illustrated, RotoWire, Baseball America, The New York Times, and many more outlets. Currently, he is the Joe Sheehan newsletter, which has been in existence since 2010. I'm a longtime subscriber, and personally, I'm a gigantic fan of his work. Joe Sheehan, welcome to the Au Jus.
Sorry, I'm thinking about the promo you did, and I'm hungry. Did they deliver to Westchester?
They might. I'll ask them. They're family owned, and they might be willing to do that. Yeah, they got. If you're, I don't know if you're a pizza guy or not, but if you're not into pizza, they have a pot roast sandwich that's absolutely killer, and that's not something that's usually on many menus, but it's a terrific sandwich, to be honest with you.
I don't trust anybody who's not a pizza guy.
Exactly right. Yeah, they got a special one that they call the Scarlotta, which is the family's last name, and it's got giardiniera and pepperoni, and it's a little spicy but good, tasty, if you will. So, well, Joe, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I'm a longtime fan, subscriber to the newsletter, Baseball Prospectus days, whatever. So this is a thrill for me to talk to you. I hate that I'm talking to you about possibly one of the worst teams that I've ever got out on the field. I'm a full season ticket holder of the White Sox. And before the season, I'll be honest with you, I was cursing you a little bit because you threw out the record of 54 and 108. And how did we know it was going to get so much worse? So how did you end up landing on such a low number? Nationally, I didn't see anyone else lower than that. And then why do you think it got so much worse?
The offense, mainly. I mean, this was one of the worst offenses that we've seen since the second dead ball era ended in 1969. It is literally the worst offense of any team that's ever had a DH to work with. It looked like it was going to be a bad offense at the start of the year. A lot of their younger players didn't develop. I was looking at the numbers last week, and if you look at all their first and second year players, the guys who somebody usually breaks out on a team like this, and combined, they had something like a 580 OPS in about 1,300 plate appearances. None of those players really had the breakout performance or even the fluke performance. I grew up with the 1990 Yankees. Kevin Moss, Oscar Zokar, guys like that, where at least for 1 year they were entertaining and effective. And the Sox just didn't get any of that. So you combine that with Andrew Benintendi's tanked, Andrew Vaughn has tanked, plenty of players not named Andrew have tanked. It was really the offense. And it's funny because at mid-season, when Garrett Crochet was on a full-time schedule, when Eric Fetty was on the roster, they were on pace for 120 losses with two of the top starters in the league. That actually went right for them this year, but nothing else did. The offense mainly, also the bullpen. I think it was James Fegan had the note towards the end of the season. They literally turned over the entire opening day bullpen. And it wasn't because they were all so good they got traded. I think Tanner Banks was the only one that they got dealt away. So
Michael Kopech too. Yeah, those are the only two.
Kopech too. Thank you. Kopech. And you look at it so it was already, like I say, I had them at 54 and 108. I did have them as the worst team in baseball. I think I actually gave that out in the gaming newsletter at a pretty good number. If you look at it, they actually have the skill level of about a 48-win team, like an exact replacement level team, and they got a bit unlucky. I didn't update this this week, but I know they were 11 and 39, I think, 11 and 29, I should say, in one-run games. And you don't really expect, even bad teams are typically not going to do that. So right. It was the worst team in baseball that got unlucky and became the worst team ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough for me personally as a fan watching how bad the Andrews were at the beginning of the year. And then in the second half of the year, Luis Robert just had like one of the worst half seasons I think I've ever seen out of a player of his caliber, just a star player like that. Where we're looking at it from a macro level, Joe, I mean, I'm not even looking for the White Sox to become a perennial playoff team. Just watchable, just like fluky 70s-ish team. Like, where's the road to getting back to that from where we're at right now?
Well, player dev is where it all starts. I mean, no matter whether you're paying $325 million for your roster or $125 million, you've got to start with that core of 0 to 3 players, or 0 to 5 players after they get to ARB or sign a long-term deal that are producing 15 to 20 wins. You go back through the champions of pretty much every team now for 10, 15 years, and they start with that core. And the White Sox, a couple of years ago, it looked like they had that core. Robert, Jimenez, Anderson was a little bit outside that window. Look, they actually had that. And a lot of those players didn't work out. But the thing they didn't do was go out and spend around it. You think about the Cubs. I know that's going to make me a lot of fans on this podcast. Signing John Lester back in 2015 to go with the Bryant, Rizzo, Baez, Schwarber group. That's the move that the White Sox haven't made. Talk about the Benintendi signing a couple of years ago. The largest free agent signing in this organization's history is $75 million. That's embarrassing. The White Sox, I'm not saying you have to sign excuse me, the best free agent in every market. I'm saying you have to have the $250 million player. But if you're the White Sox, sharing one of the third largest market in baseball with your history, with the size of your ballpark, where if you win, you will fill that park and get the revenue from it, you can't be that minor a player. It's interesting because Rick Hahn, he did a lot of good things. I'm a fan of the work he did. I don't necessarily know that he necessarily had to be cashiered here, but a lot of it was trades. It was the Quintana trade. It was the Sale trade, where the Adam Eaton trade that formed the core of this organization. They actually weren't a particularly good drafting team. They weren't a particularly good international signing team, Robert aside. So, they built this core, but it wasn't traditional player dev, to use that term.
Right.
I think they got better at that towards the end. One of the reasons that the Sox lost as many games as they did this year is that they didn't call up their top prospects. We saw Ramos at the end of the year. We saw Cannon, who's really a back-end guy. But Schultz, I'm shocked at Montgomery, who didn't have a good year, but I thought he would be up during the season. We'll see.
So did I.
Right. Edgar Caro was a trade pickup. I think we'll see him. I think next year's team is going to still have some of that Hahn DNA from those last few drafts that he had, and we're going to see this team improve. Now, that's got to be where it starts. And one of the shames of this current situation is that MLB has created a rule set where, because they can't get a payroll cap, it's all of these niggling little rules that punish large market teams. In one particular case, the White Sox draft no higher than 10th this year. The White Sox, the worst team in baseball history, can't draft above 10th because of these rules. So, Chris Getz and his staff have their work cut out to have, they will have the draft budget and they will have the draft positions of a team that was considerably better than it actually was. And that's tough, but they do have some young players coming through, but that's got to be the core, whether it's, Ramos, Schultz, Montgomery, Caro. I want to say there's another infielder down in the system. I apologize, I'm blanking on the name, but you've got to turn that into a group of players producing 15 to 20 WAR and making very little money. And then the next step is to build around it. They didn't do that when they had that core 6 or 7 years ago. Will they continue to do it? I think that's going to bring us to our next topic.
That's absolutely true. And the other thing the Hahn Williams end of their regime struggled with was filling in around the gaps too, Joe. Like the low end free agents. You talk about it. You want to play at the top or you want to play at the bottom. You don't want to play in the middle so much. And at the bottom, they really struggled too. And this year for me, watching Getz, I was hoping to see, and he did. He plucked off a few guys like an Eric Fetty, kind of lower in the thing, and it kind of worked out. So that's kind of what I was looking at with him this year. But when you have a core like that, let's say these guys are the core. We'll throw Hagen Smith in there too as a guy who potentially is going to come fast and he's going to be up there. And how quickly can this come together where it's at least decent? At least in August, we're not mathematically eliminated already or something like that.
The Royals lost 106 games last year. I mean, that's going to be the canonical example for a while now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a 1 year turnaround is possible. The Royals got very lucky in a number of ways this year. They also weren't a 56 win team last year. They were more like a 70 win team last year. But the time to turn it around, because the barrier for making the playoffs is much lower. It's lower than it's been in any time in baseball history. Right. You can turn things around in a 2 to 3 year period. I no longer think that any team in baseball is more than 3 years away from its next playoff spot. Not that it's going to happen, but if you're standing here today, you're Chris Getz, you've just lost all these games, I think you can reasonably say 15 games, 10 games, 10 games over a 3 year period. I know mathematically that only gets them to 76, but again, this was really a 48 win team.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
special case. Like they're going to win 60 games next year just accidentally.
Right.
Just the math says they're going to win 60 next year. But I think that's where you've got to start. You mentioned Fetty, and that's the, you make one poll like that a year, where you get $30 million worth of performance, and I'm projecting he was traded midseason. Right. That's fine, but you get that kind of performance from a $7 million investment. You've earned your keep as a GM. So we'll see if he can go back to the well and do that again. They've been explicit about the fact that they're not going to be competing at the high or maybe even the middle end next year. But that's fine. But don't spend your money on Gio Urshela, who's a 33-year-old, whatever he is now, third baseman, who's not going to really. There's no upside there. Right. Spend $900,000 on guys who missed this season, or guys who have some kind of upside skill set that can help you. So. I think they'll be they'll be better next year because they accidentally have to be. But it's going to be about does Schultz get established? Does Montgomery get established? Can the Lewis Robert? Can you even trade him this winter?
I would just because he was so bad this year.
Right.
He's got a favorable contract. There's 3 more years of control, 2 option years kind of at the back end, $20 million apiece. I mean, the defense probably can carry it as long as he's not this horrible hitting wise. I wouldn't. I'd hold him even if the plan is to trade him just to build the value back up.
That's exactly it. And you don't want to trade him now and only get X for him when you can hold him for 3 months and get 2X. The contract's still going to have a ton of value. And we've seen the upside of this player. He's a top 15 player in the AL when he's at his best. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a winter of very big moves. Trading, can you get anybody to take Andrew Benintendi? Probably not. I mean, that's how bad he's been. There's not, much in the way of, I think they hold on to Crochet.
Okay.
That's a tough call because there's an element of, anytime you have a healthy pitcher and you're not going to be challenging for playoff spots the next 2 years. So Crochet's next 360 innings don't help you.
Right.
So there's an argument for cashing him in now. I mean, that was similar to the argument for trading Fetty, and see this a lot when you've got a really good pitcher
before the
on
season too. Yeah, like they traded Dylan Cease, knowing kind of that we're heading into this situation.
And that trade value can evaporate on one pitch. So Crochet's the one guy where because he did show the number one starter upside, where maybe you go to Nashville or San Diego or Tehran or wherever the winter meetings are this year, and you say, hey, look, we're just going to say, hey, he's available. Let's get the max we can from, because he's the one guy, in addition to a returning Robert, who might return you somebody who's a top 5 prospect in your organization. But I do think that's going to come down to your pro scouting, and I don't have a read for how good the pro scouting is in this organization right now. It's something the Rays do really well, the Dodgers, the Guardians, where they look at other teams' organizations and they say, we can go get that guy, we can go get that guy. I think that's something the Sox are going to have to build up.
Yeah, absolutely, especially while they're in this mode. Joe, is and we've talked about this turnaround, and I am happy to hear what you're telling me, that it might not be that long of a winter for us to get through this, but can it be done with Jerry Reinsdorf as the owner still? I've lived with Jerry Reinsdorf as my owner of both my basketball team and my baseball team for generally my entire life. We had Jordan at least. But can it be done with him still in the way?
It's been done. So I guess the argument is that they won in 2005. So we do have some kind of proof of concept. But as long as Reinsdorf wants to run his team like he's in Milwaukee, it's going to be hard to do. I mean, they're not leveraging the biggest advantage they had. I looked up this incredible number. Since whatever the year before 19 was that they won the World Series, they have won a playoff series in 1 year, 2005. They won 3 that year. Mm-hmm. But that's the only playoff success the White Sox have had in more than 100 years. I'm just blown away by that. I mean, Reinsdorf's had the team now for 44, was it 80 or 79? I want to say.
Yeah, I think 81 is the
81.
Yeah, you're acquired it. Yeah.
So we'll call it 43 years, and they've made the play 83, 93,
2000.
Yeah, probably a couple of expanded playoff years. When I was growing up, I could tell you who made the playoffs every single year in baseball history. I comfortably cannot do that anymore. I'm not sure I can give you
even the last few years. There's so many.
Yeah.
So many teams.
So I might be missing a couple of playoff appearances, years where they won the Central, but I do know that they've only won a playoff series in 1 year in the last century, and that really shouldn't be the case, especially when you consider, since we went to this structure in 1994, I should say, the White Sox are the big swinging. It's YouTube. I don't know if I can use certain words.
You can, yeah, go for it. Yeah,
the big swinging dicks in this division. Detroit's a
Yes.
media market. Minnesota's a media market. KC and Cleveland are legitimately small markets. There's no reason for the White Sox to be fending off these teams. I'd make a similar argument actually for the Cubs, who've at
Right.
least spent at a higher level. But the White Sox are basically in a sandbox here, and they haven't leveraged that advantage. Like I said, I'm not invested. It's not my team. But I've got to say, as for you're a fan, your audience is fans. For them to be acting this way is frustrating. So I don't think that's going to change in the next couple of years, just because look. You could put Soto, Burns, and I don't remember who the third best free agent is on next year's team, and they might not get to 500. So there actually is no reason for them to invest now. But in 3 years, I'm trying to think, Churio is signed. When by the time Gunnar Henderson or Adley Rutschman is hitting free agency, these are the guys. By 28 and 29, the White Sox should really be aiming to shop for. So those are the guys. When I talk about building the core and then spending around it, figure out who the stars are going to be hitting free agency in 28 and 29. Those are the guys you have to target. Spending a lot of money before then. There is an example in the past. I want to say it was it 04 they signed Maglio Ordonez? And I was like, what are you doing? You suck. What are you doing spending all this money? And then in 05, he was on the World Series team. So there is some argument for signing the guys in advance of when you're going to begin. So maybe it's 27 that you're spending the money. But 25, 26 has got to be all about player development and maybe finding some of those low investment pieces like they did with Fetty this year. But I would say that if, like I said, sitting today, if you want to tell me 25 and 26 are washes, fine. But by 27, you should be starting 27 with eyes on, I'd say the wild card, but it's the AL Central. You should be starting, on 85 wins and making the postseason.
Totally agree. We touched on Chris Getz earlier. His trade deadline was much maligned by basically everyone except for Keith Law and yourself. And I guess my question is, despite a slow start in a White Sox uniform, the kind of last 2 months of the year, do you think Miguel Vargas can be a player on this team? Can he be a guy who's a cornerstone to build around out of this group?
I'm a little concerned. I mean, I think I can attribute the last couple of years to the Dodgers kind of mishandling him, playing him in the outfield, which didn't work out very well. He was up, he was down, the playing time wasn't consistent. I know I'm not alone in this, but I will say it all the time. Young players have to play. We saw this with the Cardinals this year, jerking around Jordan Walker. If you're going to put a young player on the roster, he's got to be in the lineup every day or he shouldn't be there. So when the Dodgers traded Vargas to the White Sox, still liking the talent and expecting him to get opportunity, I thought that trade was better than other people did. And the catchers actually, I'm sorry, the catcher went to the Tigers. I'm blanking here. The Flaherty trade and everything the Dodgers did the deadline kind of gets dumped into
the Sox they got
the two infielders.
They got Vargas with the kids, the 19-year-old kids, and the one of them was hurt. The other one did actually hit after he showed up in
I wasn't a fan of those guys. I thought Vargas held up the value of the trade, and he's looked so bad. It's not just
it's been tough.
I can look at the stat line, but you actually look at the at bats, and he's not the guy he's just not driving the ball at all.
Right.
I want to say this: he's still 24. I think goes into next year 23 or 24. You don't have anybody better. This is one of the things about the White Sox. The biggest thing that a bad team has is 5,500 plate appearances and 1,400 innings. Figure out who your guys are going to be. I would put Vargas, bat him fifth, have him play third base, opening day, do that 155 times, and then you'll know at the end of next year. I want to see what it looks like when he's left alone to play really the only position he can play and bat every single day in the lineup. I'm certainly more concerned about him than I was a year ago or even 2 months ago. But I still don't think there's any reason for the White Sox to give up on him. This is a guy who has a chance to be one of those 5 guys in the core I keep talking about. Is the down? Maybe the upside isn't what I thought. Maybe you tamp that down. Maybe he's going to be a 3 to 4 win player instead of a 5 to 6 win player. But I don't think we know. And I'll also say this: if you're Miguel Vargas, and you've read me a long time, I don't do soft factors. Right. But if you're Miguel Vargas and you've gone from I'm part of a 100-win team, one of the best organizations in baseball, and now I'm on the worst team ever, I can't help but think that is not a great way to go through your season. So I'm willing to give him a little bit of a pass for the last 2 months.
Good. I feel the same way, Joe. Last thing on the White Sox here, we mentioned absolutely terrible offense. It's been brutal to watch. It's one of the keys to dragging them all the way down. Last time I looked, and it may have changed slightly because it wasn't the final season stats, but they had a 77 OPS plus as a team. if you're looking at 2025 and you're shopping the bottom, who are guys that could help us get back to something even close to respectable out there, Joe? Is there anyone that comes to mind we could just, hey, this is $10 million and we'll plug them in and they can actually give us some sort of semblance of being decent?
I confess, and I don't know if you're going to want to edit this or not, but I just haven't even looked. It's a function of being focused on the postseason and the playoffs, and I'll get to the free agent market, November 10th or so. My focus has been so much on the current season. I apologize. I don't have a sense of who's out there or whose options might be declined. I will say that if you look at how aggressive teams are right now with declining options, with with letting their guys go to free agency, with non-tendering players, the middle and bottom of the market is probably going to be pretty deep. You think about all those teams that have questions about their local television revenue. It's up to 18 now. So you might see more talent in that pool than you would have in other years. So again, this is pro scouting. This is the front office. I don't have names for you at the top of my head. I will say though, that if you want to get 100 runs better in this offseason, you can probably do it.
I love that thought. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Looking at it myself, and I'm not even sure, because you're trying to balance who do we give plate appearances to, who do we keep giving run to on this roster, and who do you just say, like an example for me is Dominic Fletcher in right field. He doesn't hit enough to be a right fielder. Terrific glove. What do you do with that guy? Do you move him to center and trade Luis Robert and buy a real right fielder? Do you buy a real right fielder and block him? I think there's a lot of those questions that I hope get answered kind of quickly into the offseason. Let's jump off the White Sox for a second. I've been reading you a long time. One of the things you've been talking about for a while, and it has not gotten better since you've been writing about it, is gameplay and how gameplay is diminishing, basically. Pitchers are witches. We got too many strikeouts. We don't have enough balls in play. And when we do, we don't have enough singles to kind of balance things out. If you got to take Rob Manfred's chair, which is going to be vacant pretty soon, someone else is going to be in it at some point shortly. What's the first change you're making to kind of adjust gameplay so that it's a more watchable game?
I'd give the commissioner a huge raise. It's the first thing I did. I've been a big advocate for a decade now, moving the mound back. We set the mound at 60 feet, the pitching rubber at 60 feet 6 inches in 1893, which is 120 years ago now, 130 years ago now. I can do math. And, I don't know if you noticed, but pitchers throw harder. They get more extension. They're taller. John Roush wasn't throwing, the same thing that I don't know who the tallest pitcher in 1894 was, but that it's just a matter of physics. And there's frustration because they tried an experiment in the Atlantic League and people turned it into a labor issue, and it basically went nowhere. It's also the fact that the numbers for the limited experiment didn't show much difference. But again, you're talking about Atlantic League pitchers. They don't have a lot of guys throwing 99 and 100 down there. So you pretty much have to do this at the major league level. So if you gave me carte blanche, the very first thing I would do is move the mound back probably 1.5 feet in 6-inch increments over 3 years, or maybe in 4-inch increments over 6 years. But I would be moving the mound back only at the major league level, maybe in AAA. Because you can't just say, okay, we're going to move the mound back for every baseball field in the world. I mean, that's hard to do.
It's monumental.
But this is very much. It's a little bit like the golf, what golf is going through right now, where the pros are basically playing a different game because of the equipment that they use, and they're talking about change the ball, change the club. I do think moving the mound back would solve a lot of baseball's issues. The objection from very smart people is less injury related and more breaking balls will become more effective. I actually don't think they will. Okay. Right now, because the issue is the reaction time. Right. Guys used to throw 85, now they throw 95. You have less time to react. You have less time to read and react to breaking pitches. So if you move the mound back, you kind of move that reaction time a little bit back to where it was 25, 30 years ago. You don't have to do a big move to get that time back. So hitters will better be able to stay off this crazy breaking stuff. Walk rates are likely to go up. And I'd add that in addition to moving the mound back, I guess 1B for me would be an automated strike zone. Because right now hitters have to cover all of this additional ground because, look, I mean, go to scorecards on any given day, and 7 or 8 of the games are going to show you a big line of strikes called outside the zone. So I think those two things in concert would greatly balance the hitter-pitcher matchup. And then, possibly hitters would have the option to hit in different ways. Luis Arias gets all this praise for being a 115 OPS plus guy because it's a different guy stylistically. You look at, Ichiro when he was active. guys can't. You're not going to be a productive hitter with a team full of guys trying to hit like that, because some of them are going to hit for a 115 OPS plus, and more of them are going to hit for a 90 OPS plus.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hit for a certain amount of power, but there's no you think about the 6 inning rule. Like, we need more different styles of the game. I'm saying this wrong. I want more paths to winning. You think about the 80s, where you had Harvey's Wallbangers playing Whitey Herzog's Cardinals in the 82 World Series.
Exactly.
Like, we don't have everybody plays the same way now. And I think if you make these changes to the physical space on the field, you can change the balance between the pitchers and hitters and create more paths to winning, a greater variety of players, a greater variety of playing styles. So I know that it sounds like, well, you're just going to wave one magic wand, but I really do believe that if you had the pitchers were pitching from 62, you'd get about 75% of the way there, and the rest of the 25% is calling an automated strike zone.
I love it. Any thoughts to allowing the hitters to change some equipment here? Cork the bats, maybe aluminum bats, and get through the zone a little quicker. I mean, maybe risking some deaths, but I assume that
I was going to say nobody's going to play third base. Nobody's going to play third base.
I was going to say, well, I assume the robot umpires will kill a couple people each year, so I know it's a risk that we'd be willing to take. But I agree with you on the homogeneity of the way teams are built these days, Joe. And do you think that I'm surprised no one has even tried it yet, like moving the fences back, like going old Petco Park style before they kind of moved things in, and now you can hit a bunch of home runs there. But that was a cavern in the old days. You know, I'm surprised no one has gone that path, because I would think the players are so cheap, right? I mean, like you can fill the field with speedsters and guys who just run the ball down. But is this the problem that you just like you can't maintain an offense anymore trying to hit a bunch of singles? You
can maintain an offense. You just have to build it a little bit differently in those types of parks. But what we've seen, whether it's Detroit, Queens with Citi Field, Petco is a great example. I remember the first time I walked into Petco, it was 404 to the gaps. And I'm just staring out at this like, this is incredible. It's huge. All of those parks eventually moved their fences in because the hitters complained. Mm-hmm. And it was an idea that you couldn't get great hitters to sign there because they didn't want to play in these parks. I think San Francisco, which also moved their fences in recently, had the same issue. So teams are unwilling to listen to hitter complaints and to trust that they can build a team that can win in that park with players who want to play in that park. But that's been the pattern now for a couple of decades. Any team that's tried to build a park with a big outfield has eventually caved and brought the fences in. And I would love to see, you know, Colorado even kind of did a thing where they actually put made the fences higher in an effort to have more doubles and triples. Of course, then they built a team that can't reach the fences. So we haven't seen a whole lot of effect there. But greater. And this is where you'll see people actually complain about, these parks are all different. Like, this is one of the great things about baseball. You've got Fenway, and you have, you did for a little while, have Petco. This variety in ballparks is one of baseball's charms. I don't want to go back to the 70s and the cookie cutter parks in Cincinnati and Philly and Pittsburgh. This is great the way it is now. I don't want a flagpole in center field or a hill in center field like we had for a little while.
Right.
This should be something baseball can embrace. So I mean, if the team that says next year we're going to move our fences back, there's a little bit of a cost in terms of the farther back your outfield fences are, the less attractive your outfield seats are. You're farther away from the. So there's a little bit of that. But if you're still talking about going from 330 down the line to 350. Or 365 in the gap to 385, that's not really going to affect your ticket sales all that much. And it might enable you to play a different style of ball. Kaufman's probably the closest thing we have to that right now.
Yeah.
You're never bringing back turf. And you and I, Patrick, I'm guessing you're in the mid-40s?
Yeah, I'm in my mid-40s. Yeah, I remember those teams. Yes.
Turf baseball. It was a way, and of course, everybody wrecked their knees, and it was you can't get back to that. So that's one of the reasons. Like, you're not going to get back entirely to that 80s style of baseball, but probably the closest thing you can do to get that is to build a park with a very large outfield that penalizes your opponents if they're playing troglodytes out there. Mm-hmm. Enables you to say, we're going to play guys who make contact and run, play really good defense, go first to third, and build that type of team. You think about the 2015 Royals were probably the closest we've had to that. And even that was 10 years ago. I mean, the strikeout rate 10 years ago was, I want to say, maybe 18%. And it's 22% now. So that's a lot of extra outs that you can't convert. So I don't know that there's like I say, moving the mound back, which they're not going to do, is the fastest way to get there. Then you've got to look at ABS You got to find some way to make the pitcher-batter battle more fair. Limiting pitchers on a roster should have a knock-on effect of making teams select for pitchers with greater endurance as opposed to just one-inning slider monsters. Like there are things, but here's my biggest problem, Patrick, is that we've been having this conversation now for 10 years. I wrote my big opus on strikeouts in 2014. It was later excerpted in Sports Illustrated. It's been 10 years. Strikeout rate is 5% higher than it was then, and nobody's done anything. Yeah. What is it going to take to get MLB to do anything about this? Like they capped pitchers on a roster at 13 and thought they'd done something. Right. That's not the strikeouts are the problem, so they banned the shift.
Right. Let's incentivize you trying to pull the ball more. Let's go.
I screamed about this. Like if you take away the penalty for dead pull hitting, you're just going. So the second baseman isn't in right field anymore. Guess what? Now hitters are free to keep swinging for the fences and swinging and missing.
Of course.
It's incredibly frustrating. Strikeout rate appears to have flatlined this year, but really it's a function of defenses being better. So outs are finite. There are 27 and 54 in a game.
Yep.
If more balls in play are becoming outs, whether because homer to fly ball is dropped, which it has, or BABIP is dropped, there's just fewer guys to strike out. So the baseline strikeout rate really hasn't improved. It's just more outs are being made on balls in play. So I think baseball continues to have its head in the sand on all of this. And there are good things about the game, and they're making big, $11 billion in revenue. They don't seem to care, but the argument's been made to me that the average fan doesn't notice. I kind of get that. I think the average fan couldn't tell you the strikeout rate's gone from 18% to 22%, or we have the lowest rate of singles in baseball history. What they can tell you is that it just looks different, even if they can't necessarily quantify how. I'm not saying we got to bring back small ball because, look, there are things we're never going back to. Jay Bell bunting 30 times in front of Barry Bonds is never coming back.
Right.
But you can bring back a game where singles are more prominent. To me, singles are the thing. And the other thing I've talked about a lot, Patrick, is the hits and strikeouts. Yep. In 2000, I want to say I wrote in 2018 that eventually there would be more strikeouts than hits, and that would be the moment where everybody went, oh, we got to do something. Well, we've just had our 6th straight season, 7th, with more strikeouts than hits. Yeah. We had a month this year where there were more hits than strikeouts, and it was like the first time there'd even been a month with more hits than strikeouts in 5 years. So that to me should have been the glaciers are melting moment. Strikeout, you are more likely to see a strikeout than you are to see a hit. And we passed that. Nobody blinked. So, yeah, I'm definitely frustrated.
It's not like the pitchers aren't getting more athletic. They're not adding more spin to their breaking balls. I mean, this is all this stuff keeps going up and up. And, there's nothing.
Well, we're starting the postseason tomorrow. And we will see hundreds more strikeouts than hits in the postseason. And we will see 14, 15 strikeouts a game. And we're going to see all of these anonymous. AJ Hinch basically to say today, it's going to be Tariq Skubal and then Johnny Holstaff every other game. And bless, I'll be honest with you, I would love to see them win the World Series starting 15 openers along the way. Tariq Skubal and 15 openers, just because everybody's head would explode. Like I'm not even kidding you. I want to see Jason Stark interviewing AJ Hinch I love Jason, but he's one of these guys who really wants starting pitching to be a thing again. I want John Smoltz to have to cover a World Series where 5 openers are used. Just please.
I mean, the combination of that and them trading their best starter at the deadline and making it all the way would just be absolutely perfect for this. I want to transition over to the playoffs in general as we're heading to that topic. I know you're not a big fan of the current structure because it devalues the regular season. We don't see kind of those great pennant races anymore. In fact, I mean, the weird thing that happened today wasn't even really that exciting, but it's like all that we had this year with regards to like drama down the stretch. If you had your way, what would the playoffs look like, Joe?
I would eliminate 2 teams. I would go back to 4 divisions of 7, and conceding that I can't get back to the 1969 to 1993 format, I would advance 8 teams to the playoffs.
Okay.
Keeps the focus on the best teams, increases the chance that the best team actually, or one of the best teams, wins the World Series. I think it would give us more meaning and better baseball down the stretch as well. And honestly, I don't know that everybody feels this way. I think the playoffs are actually too long now, where baseball was never meant to be played at this level of maximum intensity for an entire month. It's a grind now. Like, everybody loves the NHL playoffs, but NHL teams don't play back-to-backs. NBA teams don't play back-to-backs. MLB teams play back-to-back every day. And then, in the LCS of the World Series, they play 3 straight days. It's just baseball was never meant to be played with your hair on fire for 4 rounds. So I think actually we're losing some entertainment value in the playoffs. By the time we get to the World Series, everybody, the players themselves, are just exhausted. I don't think we're getting the best quality of play in the World Series we could get because the playoffs are too long. So yeah, I would eliminate 2 teams, go back to 28, 4 divisions of 7, 8 teams advance. And whether that's division winners in each league and then the next 2 best records, or it's the top 2 teams in each division, I'm agnostic as to that. Probably the top 2 teams in each division. Keep in mind that we're in a kind of a transitional phase here. MLB wants to get to 32 teams. It's the whole reason we've had this Oakland-Tampa Bay thing, because Rob Manfred strapped himself to the A's and Rays situations, and he can't get to expansion until those situations are resolved. He basically said that. So he's gone along with everything here, including basically 2 parks that are vaporware at this point, so we can get to expansion and then retire. So we're more likely to get to 32. At 32, 8 is taking 25% of the league, and you're basically at the same point you were in 1969 when they expanded to 24 teams. Could you really only have 2 teams from that format? So they expanded. They went to divisions, 4 out of 24. Right. A lot of this is driven by TV money. Networks want to pay for playoff games more than they want to pay for regular season games. So it's not as if MLB is making these decisions, sitting down and going, what would be the best possible form of Major League Baseball? They haven't had those conversations in a century. It's just, where can we grab all the money, whether it's gambling or TV or advertising on the helmets, advertising on the uniforms. For a group of 30 businesses that are chopping up $11 billion, they sure seem awfully worried about picking nickels up off the ground.
I know, patches on jerseys now and everything. It's wild. Now, let's assume that the playoffs are going to kind of stay similar to a larger field. Would you make any changes to it, Joe, kind of similarly as is, that you think could improve the play? I know you're saying it's a little bit of a long season or a long playoff season. Would you make any adjustments to the 12-team and what I think eventually will be like a 14-team? Because I think they're inching closer and closer to like adding another team.
And well, it'll be 16 by the middle of the next decade. They'll expand to 32, and then we'll have 16. And we'll look really like the NBA at that point. That's, I think, what they're, with the schedule changes in recent years, playing every opponent, that's what they're trying to get to as an NBA structure. You see a lot of complaints about the length of the division series, best of 5 versus best of 7. And there's no difference mathematically between 3, 5, 7. You've got to get out to like best of 83 to make sure that the better team wins. No, it's literally, the math has been done. So I don't really care about that so much. If you're saying we have to take 12 teams, I would probably like to chop a week off the season, whether that's going to 154 games or playing 8 doubleheaders over the course of the 25 weeks, starting the postseason earlier, just so that you've got a little more wiggle room. I would like to see them stop using tiebreakers for the last playoff spot. The Diamondbacks were eliminated this afternoon, and go back to playing ties on the field like they did for 100 years. Baseball has this wonderful tradition of one-game playoffs that they've thrown away, and it's entirely because of the time. They're cramming this 4-tiered playoff now, trying to get it in by the first week in November, because you get to a point where weather starts to really affect the play, and you can't really go any deeper into November. It works if the Astros play the Brewers, and it doesn't work if the Red Sox play the Cubs. So you never know what you're going to get. But yeah, I think slicing a week off the regular season. I'm a regular season guy. I don't love this idea, but I think you've got to give yourself more room, give yourself time to play tiebreakers out on the field, take more control of your postseason scheduling, which is dictated entirely by television right now. Maybe build in a little more time, not necessarily during series, but at least maybe between series, just to kind of, because the hair on fire thing, I mean, we had I think it was 19 of 20 games were played in the division series maybe 2 years ago. And it's just, by the end of the division series, everybody's
aghast.
I mean,
that's not the left.
Like, these are specific problems to me because I cover the entire league. But I do really think that you're just exhausting fans. It's really hard to maintain this level of intensity as a fan, as a player, as media for an entire month. So just something that makes it less of a grind. One of the things is that the World Series was special, for 67 years, 66 years. And then it was still special in the era of division crowns. But now it's like the MLB finals. It doesn't feel as special because it's the end of this. I've taken to calling the leagues conferences, which is what they are. They're not separate leagues anymore.
Right.
I've taken a calling this round that we're about to start the conference quarterfinals, because guess what? That's what it is. It's the conference quarterfinals. We can call it whatever. You can call it what you want. It's the conference quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And when we go through all of these rounds, the World Series just starts to feel like the finals, as opposed to the capital W, capital S World Series. I think MLB has diminished a lot of its own specialness in this way. So part of this is silly, because no league in sports history has ever reduced the size of its playoff.
Right. Not likely to happen.
So, if we have to with 12, I would like to at least try to create a little more breathing room in October, while still keeping the playoffs from leaking much past Thanksgiving.
I love that. Let's jump off baseball. Let's get to a couple fun things before we get out of here. I know you used to be a poker player, specifically tournament poker. If at some point the government gets its head out of its ass and decides to legalize poker, they've got sports is everywhere, all over the goddamn place, but we can't get legalized poker in most places. You see yourself getting back into tournament poker a little bit, or you think that ship has sailed for you?
Well, I did play online before UIGA back in 2007, but most of my tournament play was in person at Commerce and the Bike in Los Angeles, a little bit in Las Vegas. I played one bracelet event. I'd love to do that someday. And down in New Jersey in Atlantic City, I've played, for me, it's less the legality online and more just time. I found that I don't have the patience anymore to play long sessions. I've only played poker, I'd have to, maybe 12 times since the pandemic. It's just not something I do anymore, because you have to be willing to sit and commit the time, whether you're playing a cash game, especially a tournament. I had some tournament experience where it's like, I've now spent 8 hours here today, and I got it in aces versus 8-3 offsuit, and I lost. And okay, well, that's 8 hours of my life I'm never getting back, And I have other, I became a father, I started my own business with the newsletter. It's just like there are ways in which I'd rather spend my time. I could see a time, maybe 5 years down the road, maybe 10, my daughter will be out in college, and maybe the newsletter will be in a different place where I could go back to it. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the challenge of particularly tournament poker.
Right.
I think it was better. I was a better tournament player than I was a cash player for a long time. I would like to one year spend a month out in Las Vegas during the World Series, play a bunch of events out there, whether it's the series or the other events that go on parallel to it. I saw, maybe it was Maria Sharapova said something. They called it summer camp, poker summer camp, and I love that term. So I'd like to do something like that, golf a little bit and spend some time out there. But as somebody who covers baseball, it's hard to just take 3 weeks off in the middle of June. And bye, guys. So we'll see. But
ask them to move the All-Star break for you and make it 3 weeks long.
In 2028, they're going to stop the season for the Olympics. That'll be my time off. But no, I for me, poker is something I did a lot for a while, particularly living in LA, because LA, the card rooms everywhere. And I got a buddy now who's still kind of a semi-pro player, and I know a lot of guys who do it. And it's just a time investment for me. So could I do it down the road? Yeah, maybe at least play the senior event in the summer, play a bracelet event. Be 50. I'll be 55 now. I'll be 54 next summer. It's bad when you can't remember your age, man.
Were you Hold'em only, Joe, or did you play mixed games, or what when you were playing?
I've played like one session of Omaha high-low in my life.
Okay.
Other than that, I take that back. Actually, I did play 1 to 5 stud for a while. When I first started going to Commerce, I played 1 to 5 stud. This was before the poker revolution, before capped no limit games really existed. If you wanted to play no limit, you had to play no limit.
It was right.
And I want to say 2003 or so, cap no limit games started showing up, and I pretty much shifted over to there. And there was a lot more dead money in the 2000s than there is today, man. I follow. I watch 1 or 2 poker YouTubers now and again, and I read stuff about it. It's just such a different game now than it was even 5 years ago with solvers and. If some of I'm willing to say it just kind of passed me by.
Game theory, optimal play, and it just seems like at the lower levels, I think it's probably still a game we would recognize, but at the higher levels, I think it's.
I can go to the Borgata. I can sit in the Borgata 1-3 and play ABC and be fine. But if you're going to level up from there, it's different. It's a different game.
It's tough. All right, last thing, and this is a quote: "Individuals will recognize and support quality if given that option." Joe, that's the mantra for your newsletter. Still true today?
Yes. More than ever. I mean, this is what the industry is now. When I wrote that in 2012, maybe, newsletters going independent was still a fairly new thing. Now, of course, with the Substack being developed and that creating a platform for a lot of writers, this is the way writers make money now. So many places no longer exist for writers to make money. Whether it's what was the Fan Nation, not Fan Nation. What am I thinking of? SB Nation.
SB Nation, yeah.
Places like that have
gotten rid of almost
everything. The Athletic put a lot of money in people's pockets, and the Times still keeps it going, but not the same way that it was when the Athletic was first just starting out. Now everybody's got their own shingle. Your barber probably has a Substack. Ask him.
More than likely.
I think, if I take anything long term from what I've done, whether at Prospectus or here, it's that you got to hang out your own shingle. The 5 of us started it in '95. And that's still going today. The 30th annual will come out in about 6 months. I started this in 2010, and I was proud to write for all the places I've written for, Sports Illustrated, The Times, The Athletic. But whether those places don't exist, or they exist in a diminished form, or they don't really have the freelance hours they used to, one thing I can count on is I can write, put it out there, and thousands of people are paying me to read the stuff. So I've been very fortunate. I got there early, but a lot of people, like I say, I get 9 newsletters a day. I think about Craig Calcaterra, Mike Tenier, Nate Silver. Some people do free. Like Will Leach and Keith Law have free newsletters that they just use to write stuff that they don't have an outlet for elsewhere.
Outside of their thing.
Joe Poznansky has one now. So this is the way of the world. I think the individuals will support Quality Line. I think that's been proven in spades. It might be the smartest thing I've ever written. Frankly, we know that's not baseball, so maybe I'll have to go with that.
I love it, Joe. I just want to say thanks for sharing your thoughts on the White Sox utility, where it can go from here, MLB gameplay and potential solutions, the playoffs, tournament poker, and for creating a great newsletter for me and a lot of other people to enjoy. Remember, we're not trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Anything you want to plug before you go?
JoeSheehan.com. It's a great time to sign up for the newsletter. You can go to JoeSheehan.com. You can read excerpts of everything I do. There's a whole page of free stuff in the archives. I don't think there's a lot of White Sox content in the archives. Sorry about that. There's a free list. Click the link on the page at JoeSheehan.com. You can get on the free list. You get 1 newsletter a week throughout, basically forever. If you want, check it out. See if it's something you want to subscribe to. As you mentioned, this was one of the first pay subscription newsletters, so the main feed does cost. I've never had anybody say they don't get enough for their money. I've had some people say it's too much. But if you sign up today, you'll probably get your money's worth by the end of October. I love writing about the postseason. I may not like the format. I may not like a lot of things about MLB, but you kind of turn that part of your brain off and say, hey, look, let's have some fun. It's the playoffs. Let's write about it. Let's talk about it. And it's unfortunate to get to do it. So JoeSheehan.com for more information.
Absolutely. I would co-sign all that, Joe, because that's my favorite time of the year reading you. I love reading you all the time, but the playoffs is absolutely the best time. It's in the notes of the YouTube. It'll be on the podcast thing as well. The link to everyone go sign up. Subscribe, baby. Let's go. Joe, thanks. Take care. I appreciate you, my friend. That was Joe Sheehan. That was great. I'm glad I got a chance to do that. That's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Next week's guest, I actually have no guest next week. Next week, I'm going to solo this thing up. I have some White Sox topics I want to get out there and talk about. We talked a little bit about them turning over the bullpen. That's something that's interesting to me. They went from a bullpen that they couldn't move anyone. Now they got a lot of movable parts in there. So next week, we'll be back with that. We'll see you on Thursday for the One Way Podcast. Bye-bye, and I love all of you.